Hello everyone, welcome to BioTouch. This is our July workshop where we'll be addressing digestive issues. And tonight we are very fortunate to have Dr. Stender here with us from Tucson. He is a retired chiropractor and health coach. So, Dr. Stender.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
I appreciate it. This is my second talk here. I love the energy in this group. We have very congruent philosophies about health, and that is that your body is amazing. We're all walking, talking miracles, and if you just get rid of the interference to that, your body can get well, and I think everyone in this room would probably agree with that. So we're going to talk about digestion. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said all disease starts in the gut. And for a long time, there was a lot of questions about that, whether that was actually a fact. And the scientific research is becoming very, very clear that, in fact, all disease does start in the gut. Okay, and you can use food. Food can be your medicine, but it can also be your enemy. Okay, we're going to go into a lot of different things. The first thing I want to start is where does digestion start? Where does digestion start?
How about the mouth?
The mouth, right?
Okay.
Well, physically, yes, but in reality, it starts in the brain. How we interpret it, our visual, aroma, all of these things, that's in the handout here too, the psychology of eating. And I start with this. When I'm coaching people, which requires usually a lot of changes in dietary habits for a variety of reasons, we have to start here in the brain. You got to slow down, chew your food. Okay, so your food, and in particular, your saliva, we have enzymes that break down our food, and it starts in our mouth. Two enzymes in particular in our saliva, amylase and lipase. And they break down primarily sugar and fat, okay, so starch and fat. And then our digestive system is this tube, about 20 to 25 feet long, okay, starts here. And oh, by the way, where does it end? Do I need to go anyone have any questions? Yeah, so sometimes people do get those two confused, and they can be very difficult to work with. But anyway, so we got this tube, 20 to 25 feet long, goes from our esophagus and into our stomach, eventually our small intestine, then our large intestine or colon, and then out the rectum and into the toilet, okay? And so a lot of things can happen on the way down. So like I said, the saliva, when we chew and follow the instructions on the handout and become a conscious eater. This is a big, big problem. I grew up, I was talking to Sherilyn here, I grew up on a farm, okay? And we were taught, that eating is just something you get out of the way so you can get out and get your work done. Anyone else, can you relate to that, right? And so it was all about sustenance and providing enough energy to get out there and get it done. So this is a big problem for people. Stress and cortisol and fast eating, it sets us up for all kinds of problems with our digestion. As it works its way down the esophagus into our stomach, now here's where there's a lot of misconceptions about acid, okay? We need acid, in particular hydrochloric acid, the stuff you clean out your swimming pools with. We need to produce a lot of that to break down protein. Okay, there's other enzymes as well, like pepsin and things, digestive enzymes, but that's where protein is broken down. I put in here on 6 fundamentals of proper digestion, the importance of hydrochloric acid, betaine, and these digestive enzymes to break down the protein. And if you have a history, for instance, of heartburn and things like that, probably the worst thing you can do is take antacids. Okay, now unless it's so severe as creating ulcers or something like that, that's a recipe for an ongoing problem. means and I work primarily with thyroid and autoimmune people, and so this is a huge problem in that category. And so if you're struggling to make hydrochloric acid, what's going to happen is that bolus of protein is going to sit in your stomach. Okay? It doesn't break down. Okay? So what happens is when it doesn't break down, it sits there. And when it sits there long enough, it ferments. And that fermentation process is what creates the acid reflux. And so they give you antacids, and then even worse, like proton pump inhibitors, which are, by the way, probably coming in. There's going to be a black box warning on these things. They're leading to heart disease, cancer, all sorts of, and even death. Okay, so all sorts of problems if you're taking those long term. Okay, so giving acid is not the answer, except in specific, very isolated cases. So be really wary of that. If you're having any kind of reflux, try that route. Just some HCl, betaine HCl, digestive enzymes, something like that, something to break that down, and that'll typically stop that. Now, as we work into our digestive tract, remember I said it's 25 feet long, into our small intestine, then eventually our large intestine. As we get into the small intestine, we need bacteria, right? Is everyone familiar with our microbiome? And I'm going to go into that a little bit more. But in our small intestine, you can, if you're getting belching or bloating and distension after you eat healthy foods like carbohydrates or taking probiotics, the light should go on for you. Okay, that could be something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That's an infection and it has to be dealt with. And you can do it naturally. There's some herbs and things you can do, and you got to starve out the bacteria. Okay, those bacteria, where we want the majority of those healthy bacteria and healthy strains of bacteria, is in our colon. Okay, so a little word on the microbiome. Okay, so we're made up of about 70 trillion cells or so. I stayed up last night and counted the last ones. Yeah, right. And so I want to put perspective on our microbiome. We're so afraid of bacteria. We're so afraid of germs, like they're the enemy. In fact, they're a friend, and we can't survive without them. We have 10 times more bacteria than we do cells in our body. We have now get this. I don't know if you know this, but you're only 1% human. We have 100 times more bacterial DNA in our body than we do human DNA. The Human Microbiome Project came out just in the last few years, and what we're learning from that and the research and what we're getting out there now is how important our microbiome is to our overall health. You can't make hormones, you can't make neurotransmitters, literally no part of our body, it doesn't depend on. Our brain needs it. You cannot have a good brain health without a healthy microbiome. It's called the gut-brain axis. So perspective, okay, so what's happened in this country, we've declared war on germs. Okay, germs do not cause disease, folks. No more than cars cause car accidents. Now, do they have to be there in certain cases? And if there's an overgrowth of them, can there be a problem? Yes, but they're not the underlying cause. If you have a healthy terrain, you have a healthy immune system, you can fight these things off. So, the microbiome, in order to cultivate a healthy microbiome, we need diversity and we need numbers. Okay, so here's the deal. So we have normally, a whole bunch of healthy bacteria, and then what they call pathogenic bacteria, like E. coli or H. pylori or Salmonella and these other things. By the way, there's no such thing as good or bad bacteria. It's just when these pathogenic ones, if they get too much of the ratio, right, they start to overwhelm your body. So what we need to do is enrich and diversify all the good strains to keep them at bay. Think of your microbiome like an ecosystem, okay, like the rainforest, right? What happens when you start deforesting, right, in the rainforest. You start moving things around. That's, I really believe, is behind a lot of our chronic illness today. Autoimmune is I teach thyroid and integrated medicine at the U of A, and these concepts are new, okay? And we're teaching these things and getting people and getting these practitioners to realize first place they should be looking for autoimmune problems is in the gut, okay? Because it's going to be pretty soon here that 1 out of 3 Americans are going to have an autoimmune disease or condition. It's epidemic, and it starts in the gut. And I want to go into that mechanism a little bit more, but that microbiome is absolutely essential. Okay, so again, this tube, 25 feet long, when we get into the intestinal area, it literally is, it's 1 cell thick. The lining, 1 cell, it's razor thin. Got it? But it has the surface area of a tennis court. Just let that just sink in just for a second, you know, what we're looking at here. And that lining is like a shag carpeting and very thin, and it's like cheesecloth. Okay, so how does cheesecloth work? Okay, it's like a sieve. So if you pour gravy into a cheesecloth, what does it do? It keeps the clumps out, right? It keeps the clumps out so it runs through. That's the way our digestive system is meant to work. It keeps out the large, what we call macromolecules, and these offending molecules. But here's the problem. We're eating things, and we're introducing things on a daily basis to our gut that's tearing the cheesecloth. Okay, now tearing in the cheese. So here's the deal. So the biggest offender, by the way, is gluten. And if you think anyone is safe from gluten, think again. Okay, I don't care who you are, what the new science says is that anyone who consumes gluten is going to get leaky gut. Every time you eat gluten, and this is a study done at Harvard just in the last couple years, every time you eat gluten, whether you're celiac, non-celiac, gluten sensitive or not, it is going to create intestinal permeability. That's leaky gut. Got it? And so, you know, so here's the deal. So we get up in the morning, we have a piece of toast, you know, with our eggs or whatever it is, tears the cheesecloth, okay? But our body heals, and especially our gut, because it regenerates in like 3 days, but literally it'll heal. You know, our body has that capacity, right? Well, then at lunch, maybe you'll have a sandwich, and it tears the cheesecloth, okay? It opens up these, more permeability. And then at night we'll, you know, have a pizza or some other pasta or bread. It tears the cheesecloth. Or maybe we put croutons on our salad. Tears the cheesecloth. And then after a while, one day, all of a sudden, it doesn't heal anymore. And now you're opening the floodgates for an autoimmune disorder. Okay, autoimmune starts with loss of oral tolerance. We get these food sensitivities, and it's because of the tear in the cheesecloth. Okay, and these, by the way, you have to have a genetic susceptibility to certain things, but the fact is that every time these offending proteins get into our bloodstream because of that intestinal permeability, our immune system doesn't like that. Okay, our immune system says, what are these big macromolecules doing? These large proteins doing in my bloodstream? They're an enemy. Okay, so picture Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's got his dark glasses on, and he's got his gun, and he's the immune guy, right? He says, you aren't supposed to be here, so he starts firing cytokines, these chemical messages at it, and it creates this systemic inflammatory response. Okay, so if you're feeling achy in your joints and you're feeling bloated or brain fog, your knees, all sorts of things, okay, can happen when these cytokines are released into our bloodstream. Now here's the other thing, okay, not only, and here's why your thyroid and your brain and your liver are probably most susceptible to this, because it's whatever the weak link in your chain is, okay, so in your genetic tendency, the cytokines are going to start attacking that. So these series of amino acids called peptides, okay, these large clumps are getting through, right? And so our immune system says, no, 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 bam, 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 and then all of a sudden, so our bloodstream carries this past our thyroid to our brain, all these different areas, and these tissues look a lot like gluten or some of these other offending proteins. It's called molecular mimicry or cross-reactivity. You see what I'm saying here? So let's say the sequence of the amino acids is AABCD, okay? And thyroid tissue just happens, those binding sites in the thyroid tissue happens to have the same sequences in it. So as far as the immune system says, it's close enough, and it starts targeting the thyroid. And this is how Hashimoto starts, okay, for the most part. You can start targeting the brain. If you're gluten sensitive, the second most common area to be attacked is the brain. So after you eat that bread or whatever, you might not get any stomach upset. By the way, someone with celiac, that's someone who it attacks the gut directly, and you get immediate symptoms typically in the gut. But if you get brain fog or a little headache, or after you eat or ingest something the next day, or even shortly after, that's the tissue it's attacking. Okay, so so needless to say, what we're putting in our digestive system, and I made a list here of all the offenders. So if you suspect, or if you have a family history, by the way, in clinical practice, people I work with, 7 out of 10 are gluten sensitive, okay? And I think that's a very conservative estimate. So they've been tested and their immune system is producing antibodies, okay, to gluten. Here's the other problem with normal gluten. Who's been tested for gluten here? Anyone? Okay. Yes, so here's the deal. People go get a gluten test, and for years and years, the only one they ran was something called alpha-gliadin. It's one of 10 gluten proteins, and that's the only one they had the capability to test for. So if you were negative for alpha-gliadin, then you don't have a gluten sensitivity. Wrong. In fact, there's several, and it's a matter of the size of the peptide chain. Like gluten is a 33 protein change or clump, if you will, and there's others that are 10, there's 17, 24, and so now they can identify all of these. Some of these are even worse than alpha-gliadin. There's something called wheat germ agglutinin, which is known to attack the cerebellum and also climb up your vagus nerve. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is a nerve that controls all the parasympathetic nerve supply to your organs, all of them. Okay, it starts in your brainstem. Okay, it's your 10th cranial nerve. And so what they discovered with wheat germ agglutinin, by the way, it's found in anything that has wheat germ. Remember where they told us whole grains and how healthy it was, growing up? Wrong. It's probably the worst thing you can do if you have a tendency towards an autoimmune condition. Okay, so wheat germ agglutinin and these lectins literally can climb. They can literally climb your vagus nerve. There's a statistically significantly higher number of Parkinson's patients who have a sensitivity to wheat germ agglutinin. They did, in China, they basically did vagotomies where they took out and cut off the vagus nerve in severe cases of ulcers. And so they had like 2,000 people in China that they studied these people, and their incidence of Parkinson's was 40% less, because they cut off the vagus nerve. Now, we don't want to be cutting off our vagus nerve, do we? We just don't want those lectins, okay, and those offending proteins climbing that and causing damage in that area. Does that make sense? So think of your baby. Now, I'm going to show you some exercises you can do for your vagal nerve, and I give this to all my clients because most of them, their digestion's really compromised. So if you want to strengthen, our nervous system's like anything else. It's like our muscles. If we want to strengthen our muscles, we lift weights or whatever, exercise, and whatever it is, you can do the same thing with your nervous system. It's very pliable. It's very what we call neuroplastic. It'll change if you just exercise it and stimulate it, right? So number one, gargle. Get what I tell, now a lot of my clients are very, very sick and compromised, and I work with a lot of autoimmune, a lot of thyroid, okay? And so that's, I want them drinking almost half their body weight in fluid ounces, so they're always going to have water with them. But every time they drink their water, I want them to gargle vigorously all day long, okay? Another thing you can do is sing.
With what?
Water. Yeah, or anything. Yeah. Not Listerine, though. Like when we were kids. Yeah, just gargle vigorously. Another thing is singing loudly. So when I think I have a pretty good voice.
Let's hear it.
Yeah.
I only do it in my car. And it's even better in the shower. So that's the only places I sing. So sorry. Nice try, Paul. So singing loudly. By the way, it really gets your heart rate up. You feel good. But so think about this. Your vagus nerve is a parasympathetic nerve supply. So what does that mean? So our autonomic nervous system, or our automatic nervous system, is comprised of our sympathetic and our parasympathetic. This is the parasympathetic. So sympathetic is the flight or fright syndrome. If you see a bear in the woods, what are you going to do? Are you going to stay and fight, or are you going to run? Either way, your pupils dilate, your blood vessels, everything, your blood vessels are going to start pumping adrenaline through your system, right? And most of America is in sympathetic overload. Stress, cortisol, adrenaline is producing this sympathetic overload. So it's important we exercise the parasympathetic part of it. And again, this is simple stuff that anyone can do. The other thing you can do is a gag reflex. So here's the gargling and singing are like cardio for your vagus nerve. Just take a tongue depressor. Don't put it and stick it in the back of your throat, okay? Just push down on the back of your tongue and it'll create a little gag reflex. And do that routinely and it'll strengthen it. I actually have clients when they start with me, they can't even initiate a gag reflex. That's how weak their autonomic nervous system is. So I started having them doing that, and guess what? What happens if the nervous system, which controls basically all our peristalsis, all of our organ function, everything starts working a little better. So this is just a little trick. It's by no means the only thing. The other thing I'll tell you too, the people I work with, that I coach with, what I tell them, what you must avoid is more important than what you can have. Okay? But what you have, it has to be diverse. Don't get into the habit, even if you're on a restrictive diet, to just eating the same things over and over again. You want to strengthen that microbiome, okay? Diversify the microbiome. Lots of vegetables. We want to shoot for about 7 servings of vegetables a day, about a 4 or 5 to 1 veggie to fruit ratio. Try and avoid things that are going to really jump your blood sugar up, like tropical fruits, bananas, pineapples, things like that. Not so good, okay? That's like taking, literally, might as well just eat a teaspoon of sugar. Okay, jumps it. Blood sugar control is very important for all of this too. So your digestion, so I guess my point is, do an elimination diet. And if you have any questions, I'm going to recommend certain books for you. There's a couple books I find really fascinating in this area. One is called The Plant Paradox by Stephen Gundry. He was a pediatric heart transplant specialist. And Dr. Gundry showed, he's the one that really goes into in depth the harm of these certain plants, especially those with seeds, and how toxic they are to us. And if you have any tendency towards autoimmune, take them out of your diet. But there's a whole bunch of things you can do. If Another good reference, one of my mentors, I got into doing this because my wife had a very severe case of Hashimoto's, autoimmune. She was nearly in a myxedemic coma. It had gotten so bad. So guess what? I was a chiropractor. I had a background in nutrition, you know, but I thought, oh, I can fix her. I'll fix her spine, fix her nervous system, and she'll be fine. Well, she wasn't fine. And so I went to work, and I spent literally thousands, and I mean thousands of hours doing the research, studying under some brilliant, brilliant people. I applied fundamentals to her, like what I'm outlining here. She got her life back. Almost everything you put in your body is going to take you down the road to autoimmune if it's not good. Okay, so they're even showing now that heart disease, in the last couple years of research, or the last 10 years, there's been 70 to 80 papers that I'm familiar with, where heart disease, the #1 killer in the United States, is actually an autoimmune condition in the initiating stages. So your immune system's attacking the inside of your arteries. So the point is what you put in here and how you process it is going to dictate your health future. If any of you have any questions at all for me, I put my information here. Shoot me an email, shoot me a text, and I'll get back to you. If you have any specific questions about your specific condition or anything like that, I'd be happy to do it. But I want to thank everyone for having me. This is a wonderful group. I hope I projected well enough. Did I do okay?
Beautiful.
Okay, and yeah, give yourself a hand.
Give Dr. Stender a hand.
Yeah. Beautifully put together.
Yeah.
I learned so much.
Yeah. Boy.
By the way, I don't do 20-minute talks ever. You have no idea how hard that is for me. But thanks for having me.
Oh,
folks.
my
I really
goodness,
appreciate
it
it.
was,
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot you a couple emails.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do that.
Okay.
Anyone here, I'd be happy to do it. It's a great group.
thank you again, Dr. Stender, that was great. I don't know about you guys, but man, I learned a whole different
Whoa,
world.
some scary stuff in there.
Oh.
Scary stuff.
Yeah, I know, it is, isn't it? But as Dr. Stender says, it's an epidemic in this country, autoimmune. I'm sure we know somebody in our family or somebody in our friends that has some kind of autoimmune disease. It's everywhere.
Yes, sirree.
Yeah.
So now we're going to add on to what he said. We noticed there's a few new people here. Hi, how are you?
Welcome.
Never done BioTouch, or at least we've never seen you. So, you know, one of the things we're here to do is now learn how to apply BioTouch to what Dr. Stender talked about. And we love these talks.
Oh, yeah.
Because we see, oh my God, that's what's going on. Well, what we're doing works with that.
Yeah. Did you
The
catch the
vagus nerve.
stress and the,
Yeah, the stress
and the cortisol and,
the
all that?
base of the
I
skull
know.
and
I'm like,
the vagus nerve and all this stuff. So welcome. We're going to teach you BioTouch. For those who haven't done it, it's just 2 fingers lightly touching on the body. So reach over and touch somebody. Just lightly, 2 fingers.
Look at her.
You got it.
Yeah, whatever.
Yes. So that's what we do. That's the light touch healing technique that we call BioTouch. And my name's Paul.
My name's Bev.
And this is the final Paul and Bev show for health condition workshops. Oh.
Maybe not forever.
Well,
No.
Bev's leaving Monday. She'll be going to Oregon and doing some BioTouch there, living with her brother and knocking the Northwest crazy. So we have a Monday show that we also do called Mondays with Bev and Paul. And those will continue.
Yes.
Because we've learned how to do that, but Bev will not be at these anymore, so I think we're going to put Sherilyn up here. So we just recruited you. So we are going to take you through. You've all got your workbook, yes? Okay. Here's this one here. So this workbook that we're going to go over is only 2 or 3. It's only 3 sets of points. Actually, it's 4 sets of points. Well, no. Yeah, 4 sets of points from this whole manual. So this is the entire system that you can see up there with the chart. Those are all the sets of points we do. But we created these little 2-hour workshops in order to address very specific health conditions, because a lot of people, they didn't want to learn the whole thing. They just want to learn about digestive issues and what are the few sets of points that if you leave here today, you will be able to do just what Dr. Stender talked about. Now, it won't make you change your dietary habits, it won't make you stop eating gluten, but it can deal with all those symptoms that he talked about. All the digestive, if you bloat, somebody can work on you right away. If you're having digestive problems, if you are gluten intolerant, if you have an autoimmune system disease, BioTouch can address that and not just relieve the symptoms, but get you back to a state of well-being, along with all the things you would do with a Dr. Stender. So we love these presentations because there's somebody you can go to, use what he has, add BioTouch to it, and you've just got a great healthcare program. So this particular technique, we don't go into a lot of the history here, but just so you quickly know, it's a system that was created by a mining engineer in Colorado. And I was the one that met him, and I was the one that became the stooge to make it public. And the reason I wanted to make it public was because it worked. And it started in a little town in Colorado called Mancos, Colorado. If you want the full story, you either have to take our full training, which we'll tell you about later, or it's in this book here, which is up there. We sell them here at these evenings for $10, and it's an interview from one of our practitioners interviewing me, talking about her becoming a practitioner, and it's a really fun book. Easy to read, and it really allows people to say, oh, I could do that. And it was designed for the masses of people. There's not a lot of theory in here. We don't talk about energy work. We don't talk about, it's not a spiritual practice. It's not a philosophical belief system. It just works if you're a human being. And so this is the history, all in a little book here. You can also get it on your Kindle. So, we'll go over some of the other little things later. Any questions so far? What brought you all here?
Oh, well, for myself, it was a couple of years ago. I went to the church and they had some kind of function, haircuts and stuff like that. And I wasn't working at the time. I needed a haircut, so I thought, okay, I'll just get a haircut here. And I ran into your little booth, and I suffer from IBS, really bad. It's been really bad for about 6 years. And I thought, oh, what the heck? I'll just have a seat. So he did something, and I was like, what? Oh, great! Within minutes. Within minutes. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I gotta learn more. And of course, I never did. 6 years later, here I am.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah, and so I got on, you guys, I'm on your email and stuff like that. So I get to see what you guys are doing and stuff like that. And so when it said digestive, talk, I was like, I'm there today. So that's what brought me here, the stomach, because I'm just tired of my stomach bothering me. I mean, just like anybody else, right, who has migraines or, so
Right.
it's my stomach, so that's why I'm here.
Wonderful. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what brought you folks? How'd you hear about it?
I'm on your list. I'm on your mailing list.
Oh,
We
okay.
like lists.
Yeah.
Lists are working.
It does work, and I do get it, and I do look at it.
Okay.
I
Thank
live in
you.
Stafford, so I don't always get here.
Good.
Wow.
This time I made it.
Wow.
Wonderful. Thanks for coming.
Okay. And what?
I'm here for some CEs,
Oh, good.
and I first heard about BioTouch in Green Valley. I went to their market.
Right, and Gail?
Gail
Right.
Chilson.
Gail,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I was trying to go, what was her name?
Yeah.
And I didn't get any treatment or anything, I just was, and I go, hey, what's that? So she gave me a card, and that was last year.
Hey.
And I kept saying, I gotta go. Just because I wanted to know what it was about.
Good.
And so,
Wonderful. And
now
now
I
you can
need
get some CEs.
now I need CEs, so.
Yeah.
There you
That's
go.
awesome.
Well, we don't care how long it takes you to get here,
Right.
so long as you get here.
Right.
So thank you for coming.
Yeah.
because without all of you, we wouldn't be here. I mean,
That's
so
right.
it's a great opportunity. So what we're gonna do is we are going to go a little bit through the manual, and then are gonna share the points, we'll show them, and then we will break up and actually practice the points, and then share a little more about how other else you can learn. So if you'll open your little workbooks, Bev will take us through what is BioTouch, and we'll just quickly go through that.
Yeah, just a few little bullets on that page, just to kind of introduce you, those of you who are new, those of you who just So, what is BioTouch? Now it says here, well, Paul already showed you, it's a simple technique using the first two fingers of your hands, and we're lightly touching on the skin like a butterfly. It's one person touching another person on the skin. That's really the definition of BioTouch. So it's to be used in a healing relationship between two people. The first bullet says it's easy to learn, even children can learn it. And look at this, and we have seen that ourselves actually. We've actually had a couple of kids get certified.
Really?
They just know what it is. You know, I watched her. What'd she do? She's looking at things, she's like, oh yeah, right. Johnson just touches her grandmother, you know, I'm like, they get it. So it's very easy to learn. I know a lot of people say, well, I don't know about that. But the system itself is easy. And what happens with that is you're immediately able to use it and be effective. So as Paul was saying earlier, there's no levels of learning, there's no mastery levels. Once you, if you were to take our 10-hour practitioner training class, at the end of those 2 days, you'd have the whole system, and you would be able to immediately use it and immediately be effective for everybody that you want to do BioTouch with. So I don't know another technique that's quite that unique. And because we could teach you in 30 seconds how to do the next set, say. You could turn around to somebody and you could teach them that in 30 seconds. That's how easy it is. It's awesome. So it's very easy to learn, and BioTouch is a complement to any healthcare program. We're saying now, yes, it is complementary, but it's holistic and integrative, because we recognize that the body is just one of the parts of our wholeness. So we have, we think, we feel, we act, so we're a body, we have emotions, we have thoughts, and BioTouch addresses all of those systems eventually. So it brings us into a holistic, and
That's what Dr. Stender was saying too.
I
The
know,
mind, how
yeah.
the whole digestive thing starts up here, and then it goes to here, and then he brings in the whole integrative approach to
It's amazing.
digestive issues.
Right. So, you can use it with any regimen that you're on, whether you're working with a doctor, prescriptions, another healing modality, a diet of any kind. Did you leave your phone?
Oh,
Right there. Thank you, Dr. Stender.
Right where I loved it.
Right there, I know. That's what I always say. Thanks again.
Thank you.
It was wonderful.
Appreciate it.
Yep. So it's very complementary to everything. It just enhances anything you want to do. And that's a wonderful thing.
which is why we like bringing in these professional people.
Right.
Who have a protocol that they do. Dr. Stender has a particular protocol, and this can only help enhance whatever you're doing. We actually had somebody go to another fellow in town that will have to have a presentation, and at first he said, well, you shouldn't do any other kind of energy work and stuff. But then he found out about BioTouch, and he thought, oh, this is a great compliment, because it's a non-invasive. We're not moving energy. We don't really do anything. We just do the touch, and your body figures out what it needs to do with it.
Yeah.
So it's a really powerful adjunct to whatever else you're doing for your healthcare.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that he just made, that we recognize that the healing power in all of us has always been the body. It knows what it wants, and it wants to be whole, it wants to be in balance, it wants to be healthy, it wants to be happy, it wants to be loved, you know, all those kinds of things. And BioTouch gives the body what it already knows how to use. So that's why, as Paul was saying, we don't talk about moving energy, we don't talk about we're healing, or, you know, we don't use that kind of language, because we already know it's the body that is the moving force in that healing process. So we kind of already touched, we've said there's no levels of ability. The moment you're going to practice with each other tonight, you're going to be really receiving and giving BioTouch. So you will experience that. And you're going to be totally effective. That's the beauty of it. And it requires no special preparation or belief system. We have no philosophy here, except that we are all human beings. The only requirement is that you feel compassion and want to help somebody with their pain and their stress, and that's all that's required. Because you carry your tools around with you everywhere you go. You have those two fingers. And so you can just reach out and help someone.
And I was just thinking too, it almost doesn't even require that we're compassionate.
No, it's
'Cause
innate in us,
you're
isn't
just
it?
part of that, so I don't even have to like the person I'm working on. Like, I might be really pissed off like certain people we hear about all the time, or, you know, but if I work on them, that innate compassion comes out. Even though consciously I can't stand you, I don't like your hair color, I don't like your belief systems, I don't like the way you smell, you know, or you don't like my beard, you don't have to like me, I don't have to like you, but it still works.
Yes.
And so that compassion part, that's in all of us. We just forget. You know, we have all this other stuff in the way. BioTouch lets that unfold itself without us having to put ourselves in that state. I mean, I've never met anybody who was an all-kind, loving person. How could I look him in the face?
I know, it would blow you away, wouldn't it? Yeah.
So, all right.
Okay, so that's...
Any questions?
You did.
Yes.
So, can't do it on ourselves.
Good question. We always get that question.
We do.
So-
Have an answer?
We always do. We always answer it. Just by definition, it's one person touching another person on the skin, but we always say this: if you can reach those points on your body and you want to touch those points, we don't know what that's doing. I mean, that's strictly up to you. Once you are on your own, you can touch those points however, but we teach it keep the integrity of the teaching, and it's one person touching another person. Yeah,
Can't hurt.
it can't hurt. Yeah.
Good question. Other questions?
It's not a question, but I played with that. Sometimes I image the world's greatest healer working on me.
Uh-huh.
That helps. It's still better than someone else, but it helps.
Yeah, I mean, whatever works.
Yeah.
The main thing that we want is if you're out there sharing what we call BioTouch, then it's what Bev said. That's the BioTouch system. Otherwise, you're just using the BioTouch system for your own purposes. That's okay, just don't call it BioTouch. And that's all we ask. So, all right, we're gonna bring our little mannequin up here and we're gonna just teach you the points and then we're gonna practice.
Yep.
I know, it's like,
There's the other good helper. All right.
Okay, so we can turn to the first page of our little workbook, because we're going to learn what we call the greeting. This is the key to the whole technique. Whatever, you could do just one set, but you have to start, before you do anything else with the technique, start with this greeting. You want to give the greeting every single time. So we usually wash our hands, and when you're touching on the body, we hold those two fingers 6 to 8 seconds. And that's really basically it.
Dominant hand. Dominant hand.
Well, that's for the greeting, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Oh.
Somebody who's taken the class
Sorry.
and
Yeah, no, I know
comes
everything right.
and has been getting BioTouch for many years.
Yes.
He could probably teach this.
I apologize.
So again, we want to always start with the greeting, okay? If you do nothing but the greeting, it starts something going for the body. Something will change. So it's kind of the key that we say. So this is the only set that you're going to use one hand. Just one hand, and it's going to be your dominant hand, as Lester said. Dominant hand. If you're right-handed, you're going to use that. If you're left, you're going to use your left. You can use both. If you are ambidextrous, choose one, and then do. Because there's only 2 points, as you'll see in the book. So we're going to find what we call the first point, and it's that soft tissue just below the breastbone. We're going to locate that, and then we're going to take those 2 fingers and we're going to lightly hold for 6 to 8 seconds on point 1. Just count 6 to 8 seconds. And then on the back of the body, right, if you'll notice in the book, there's a little diagram of a diamond on the back. That's the big bone. It's that big bone right at the base of the neck. You want to locate that, and you want to be 1 to 1.5 inches directly to the left of that big bone. And again, dominant hand, just rest, touch lightly, 6 to 8 seconds. And that's the greeting. Now you can do whatever sets you want to do to address whatever issues are concerning. So very simple. Like I said, if you do nothing but the greeting, you're really just going to start some process for the body. Any questions about the greeting? Yes?
On point 2 right here, it looks like she's further up instead of like further back.
You want to be directly in line with that big bone.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yes,
Gotcha.
yeah,
Okay.
just 1 to 1.5 inches right to the left of the big bone.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next set we're going to learn is a metabolism set. It can be used to help the body assimilate and eliminate whatever it needs or doesn't need, such as weight loss, weight gain, fluid retention, broken bones, abnormal cell growth. And it can also be used to address blood sugar issues. There are 2 steps in metabolism. The first one, point 1, is in the indentation, so above the collarbone. On either side of the notch is the top of the breastbone. That's point 1. And this is what we call matching fire. Points 2 and 2 are halfway up the neck in front of that large muscle. Might be a little low. Okay. You hold for 6 to 8 seconds. Light butterfly touch. Points 3 and 3 are at the top of the neck in front of the large muscle. And this is step 1. Now step 2, you're going to find what we call the hold, where the X is, and that is in a line directly between where the nipples would be on a youth and 1 to 2 inches to the left of the breastbone. Another way of finding it is to go a third of the way up from your greeting point and then over 1 to 2 inches. That is your hold. You're going to keep in contact with this point while you're doing the rest of the set of the points. So we're doing what we call through fire now. So you're keeping the hold in the front, and is that good? So point 1 is going to be 1 to 2 inches above what we call the breakover point, which is where the bottom of the ribs join the spine. And then you're going to go up 1 to 2 inches. And you want to make sure you're below the shoulder blade. So about right here on the large muscle. Point 1. Point 2 is directly across from point 1, again, right on that large muscle, holding for 6 to 8 seconds. Now point 3, you're again going to find that breakover point, and you're going to go 2 to 3 inches below. You want to make sure you stay above the hips, and you're going to be right on that large muscle. This is point 3. Now there is a point 4. This is what you can use, what I mentioned earlier, for blood sugar issues. It's directly across from point 3. I can't see very well without getting my head in the way. Now, if you are addressing blood sugar issues, you can hold for 6 to 8 seconds, lift, and repeat. You do not have to do it with the metabolism set, but you do have to do the whole metabolism set to do the blood sugar point. Okay? Any questions? All right, thank you.
Now we'll get to the meat of the matter.
Yeah.
The upper and lower abdomen. So, as we can see, now we're going to deal with the upper abdomen area, the intestinal tract, the stomach, the liver, the colon, and then we get into the colon and the whole digestive system. It also, we'll see how we can work when we do local work, how we can work into the esophagus, acid reflux kinds of things. Now, even that sugar one, it was interesting, that metabolism, adding the sugar, he talked about sugar being a problem. And eating these different, eating a banana, would give you more sugar than a tablespoon, which was interesting. So, let's do the upper abdomen first, okay? The upper abdomen, you're going to be inside the rib cage and above the navel. All right? Your hold points are always designated usually by an X. That hold point means that point stays stationary while the other hand moves to touch the numbered points. So as you can see there, your hold point is going to be right at where the greeting was, right below the breastbone and the soft tissue. That will be your hold point. Then points 1 and 2 are going to be inside the rib just before it curves. And again, you're going to be in the soft tissue area. The nice thing is you don't have to be exact. It's not like acupuncture. You have almost an inch, so you don't have to worry about, oh my God, am I exactly at the right place? So it's right where the ribs begin to curve. That's point 1. Point 2 is just opposite that. And of course, these points will be different depending on how big or small the person is. Points 4 and 5 are just inside the rib where it starts to curve to the back. And 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4.
4.
And then 5 is just above the navel. Now, as you'll see here, step 2, you're still going to use those same points. So you've already now learned the points. We're just going to do them in a different way. What we're going to do now, because people are laying on their back, you're going to slide your open palm under their back. And you're going to put those 2 fingers directly through from where your whole point would be. So they're laying on it. Now we'll practice this and you'll see. So they're laying on your hand, because it'd be too hard to do it like this. So they're laying on your hand, and you do all those points again. So 1 and 2 are just inside the ribs where it curves. That's good. Find them on yourself. 3 and 4 are just inside the ribs where they begin to turn to the side. And 5 is above the navel. And then you also add the X. Now I'm going to show this to you here, even though it's a couple of pages later, what we call local working enhancement. So while your hand is underneath here, is a really good time to do local work. And so if somebody is like they're bloated, and they feel bloated here, or they're getting that acid reflux, you can slowly and deliberately sweep, what we call move your fingers slowly and deliberately across an area. And there's no directional rules. You can go this way, I can go up. I might come down the esophagus into the stomach area, into where the diaphragm is. I might sweep these ways. I might follow the ribs around. And if you sweep slow and deliberate enough, or do some extra points, you'll actually sometimes maybe feel heat, you might feel cold, you might move your fingers and it feels like it's dragging or jumping. Those are areas that the body is possibly telling you, do some extra sweeps there, or do some extra touching there. Or somebody will tell you, the doctor told me my liver panels aren't good. So I might just sweep while my hand's underneath there, just touch more around the liver. If they really have that hiatal hernia, I might just sweep down into that esophagus, into the stomach area. Or if it's just overall digestive or bacterial problems. See, we don't have to worry about all that. People will have their diagnosis and then you can work it locally. Okay, that's local work. Enhancements. That you can do whatever comes to you. There's no rules on that one. Then we go to step 3, where we bring our hands out, and we do on this particular one, those points that are on the side. So 6 and 6 are navel or?
Right above the navel.
So 6 and 6 are on the side, just above the navel area. And then 7 and 7 are just in line a little below where you did have the whole point. And you're just on the side of the body. And then we're going to do what we call matching fire again. We're just coming back, we're doing those points again, except now we're doing 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and X. So there's not a lot of points, you just do them in different ways, and as you can see, you're just working in and through, on top. You can even do a little extra work this way. Just sweep, maybe from the inside out. Now as you see, when we start adding the lower abdomen, you can do the whole area. If people are really IBS or they're all bloated, okay? So let's turn to the next page and learn the lower abdomen, which is almost just a mirror image of what you just did, except now your boundaries are going to be the hips, the hip and the pelvic bones, and below the navel. This is not one of the only ones. It's the only set where we actually press a little firmer. We're not really sure why. It's what was given to us. There's all kinds of theories. But the only point we're not going to press firm on is you're right at the top of the pubic bone. Okay? So all the points, so the pubic bone is your whole point. And then point 1 is just below the navel. Now, another thing too is we're teaching you numbered points. It doesn't matter the order. You don't have to remember, oh, where's 1? That's why I keep going, where am I here? It doesn't matter whether you do 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 3, 4, 1, 5. Okay, just so long as you get all the points. But it's there for teaching purposes. So 1 is just below the navel. 2 and 3 are going to be low inside the pelvic bone. 2 and 3. 4 and 5 are gonna be just inside the top of the hip bone, and you can see you're still all below the navel. And now you're gonna do the same thing you did on top. You're gonna take your open hand, but you're gonna slide it on the back just below that pubic bone. You're gonna be on what we call the sacrum. It's that flat area on your spine, at the bottom of the spine. And you're just gonna lay that hand there while you do all those points again. So 1, 2 and 3, low in that pelvic area. And 4 and 5 just inside the top of the hip bone there. And guess what? What did we do last time while that hand was under? We did some local work, right? So we could do some sweeps again. So people maybe have a, there's other kinds of things. There's ileocecal valves in here. There's all kinds of valves that open and close. And if they stay open, you sometimes need to work it so it'll close. So sometimes if you get belly aches, it's because one of those valves is open. So you can you can go this way. Or you might want that descending colon, you just want to help it get out the way it should go out, and so you might sweep that way. You might go now, you might bring your hand going all the way across. So you can do anything. And again, feeling to see, is it dragging? Is there maybe heat in that area? Or did they tell you that's where they hurt? Or their diagnosis tells you they have an ileocecal problem or whatever, colon problem. Diverticulitis, right. And they can tell you exactly where it is. So they don't even have to tell you, because if you just do some sweeps all around it, it's going to take care of wherever the problem is. And if anything, it's just very soothing, especially if you have a bellyache or if you're really bloated or those kinds of things. Now you bring your hand out and you do again that matching fire. 1 in X, 2 and 3, 4 and 5. And then I could, just like I showed you, I might do one side and the other side. I might come down in. See, there's all, and you just work with each person that has the problem. Any questions with that? So that next page is that local work and enhancements, which we already talked about with each of the different sets. Okay? All right, let me turn this off.